Section 21 of The Spell of Egypt. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Spell of Egypt by Robert Smythe Hichens. Chapter 18. Old Cairo, Part 1. By Old Cairo I do not mean only Le Vieux Caire of the guidebook, the little, desolate village containing the famous Coptic church of Abu Sergius, in the crypt of which the Virgin Mary and the Christ are said to have stayed when they fled to the land of Egypt to escape the fury of King Herod, but the Cairo that is not new, that is not wholly dedicated to officialdom and tourists, that in the midst of changes and the advance of civilization that does so much harm as well as so much good, that showers benefits with one hand and defaces beauty with the other, preserves its immemorial calm or immemorial tumult, that stands aloof, as stands aloof ever the Eastern from the Western man, even in the midst of what seems perhaps like intimacy, Eastern to the soul, though the fantasies, the passions, the vulgarities, the brilliant ineptitudes of the West beat about it like waves about some unyielding wall of the sea. When I went back to Egypt after a lapse of many years, I fled at once from Cairo, and upon the long reaches of the Nile, in the great spaces of the Libyan desert, in the luxuriant palm groves of the Fayoum, among the tamarisk bushes, and on the pale waters of Cairo, I forgot the changes which, in my brief glimpse of the city and its environs, had moved me to despondency. But one cannot live in the solitudes forever. And at last, from Madinat al-Fayoum, with the first pilgrims starting for Mecca, I returned to the great city, determined to seek in it once more for the fascinations it used to hold, and perhaps still held in the hidden ways where modern feet, nearly always in a hurry, had seldom time to penetrate. A mist hung over the land. Out of it, with a sort of stern energy, there came to my ears loud hymns sung by the pilgrim voices, hymns in which, mingled with the enthusiasm of devotees en route for the holiest shrine of their faith, there seemed to sound the resolution of men strung up to confront the fatigues and the dangers of a great journey through a wild and unknown country. Those hymns led my feet to the venerable mosques of Cairo, the city of mosques, guided me on my lesser pilgrimage among the cupolas and the colonnades, where grave men dream in the silence near marble fountains, or bend muttering their prayers beneath domes that are dimmed by the ruthless fingers of time. In the buildings consecrated to prayer and to meditation, I first sought for the magic that still lurks in the teeming bosom of Cairo. Long as I had sought it elsewhere, in the brilliant bazaars by day, and by night in the winding alleys, where the dark-eyed Jews look stealthily forth from the low-browed doorways, where the Circassian girls promenade, gleaming with golden coins and barbaric jewels, where the air is alive with music that is feverish and antique, and in strangely lighted interiors one sees forms clad in brilliant draperies, or severely draped in the simplest pale blue garments, moving in languid dances, fluttering painted figures, bending, swaying, dropping down like the forms that people and dream. In the bazaars is the passion for gain, in the alleys of music and light is the passion for pleasure, in the mosques is the passion for prayer that connects the soul of men with the unseen but strongly felt world. Each of these passions is old. Each of these passions in the heart of Islam is fierce. On my return to Cairo I sought for the hidden fire that is magic in the dusky places of prayer. A mist lay over the city as I stood in a narrow byway, and gazed up at a heavy lattice, of which the decayed and blackened wood seemed on guard before some tragic or weary secret. Before me was the entrance to the Mosque of Ibn Tulun, older than any mosque in Cairo save only the Mosque of Amru. It is approached by a flight of steps, on each side of which stand old, impenetrable houses. Above my head, strung across from one house to the other, were many little red and yellow flags ornamented with gold lozenges. These were to bear witness that in a couple of days' time, from the great open place beneath the citadel of Cairo, the second carpet was to set out on its long journey to Mecca. My guide struck on a door and uttered a fierce cry. A small shutter in the blackened lattice was opened, and a young girl, with kohl-tinted eyelids and a brilliant yellow handkerchief tied over her coarse black hair, leaned out, held a short parley, and vanished, drawing the shutter to behind her. The mist crept about the tawdry flags, a heavy door creaked, whined on its hinges, and from the house of the girl there came an old fat man bearing a mighty key. In a moment I was free of the mosque of Ibn Tulun. I ascended the steps, passed through a doorway, and found myself on a piece of waste ground, flanked on the right by an old mysterious wall, and on the left by the long wall of the mosque, from which, close to me, rose a grey, unornamented minaret, full of the plain dignity of unpretending age. Upon its summit was perched a large and weary-looking bird with draggled feathers, which remained so still that it seemed to me to be a sad ornament set there above the city, and watching it forever with eyes that could not see. At right angles, touching the mosque, was such a house as one can only see in the East, fantastically old, fantastically decayed, bleared, discoloured, filthy, melancholy, showing hideous windows, like windows in the slum of a town set above coal pits in a colliery district, a degraded house, and yet a house which roused the imagination and drove it to its work. In this building once dwelt the high priest of the mosque. This dwelling, the ancient wall, the grey minaret with its motionless bird, the lamentable waste ground at my feet, prepared me rightly to appreciate the bit of old Cairo I had come to see. People who are bored by Gothic churches would not love the mosque of Ibn Tulun. No longer is it used for worship. It contains no praying life. Abandoned, bare, and devoid of all lovely ornament, it stands like some hoary patriarch, naked and calm, waiting its destined end without impatience and without fear. It is a fantastic mosque, and is impressive like a fatalistic man. The great court of it, 300 feet square, with pointed arches supported by piers, double, and on the side looking toward Mecca, quintuple arcades, has a great dignity of sombre simplicity. Not grace, not a light elegance of soaring beauty, but massiveness and heavy strength are distinguishing features of this mosque. Even the octagonal basin and its protecting cupola that stands in the middle of the court lack the charm that belongs to so many of the fountains of Cairo. There are two minarets, the minaret of the bird, and a larger one, approached by a big stairway up which, so my dragoman told me, a sultan whose name I have forgotten loved to ride his favourite horse. Upon the summit of this minaret I stood for a long time looking down over the city. Grey it was that morning, almost as London is grey, but the sounds that came up softly to my ears out of the mist were not the sounds of London. Those many minarets, almost like columns of fog rising above the cupolas, spoke to me of the East even upon this sad and sunless morning. Once, from where I was standing at the time appointed, went forth the call to prayer, and in the barren court beneath me there were crowds of ardent worshippers. Stern men paced upon the huge terrace just at my feet, fingering their heads, and under that heavy cupola were made the long ablutions of the faithful. But now no man comes to this old place, no murmur to God disturbs the heavy silence. And the silence, the emptiness, and the greyness under the long arcades all seem to make a tremulous proclamation, all seem to whisper, I am very old, I am useless, I cumber the earth. Even the mosque of Amru, which stands also on ground that looks gone to waste, near dingy and squat houses built with grey bricks, seems less old than this mosque of Ibn Tulun. For its long facade is striped with white and apricot, and there are lebbek trees growing in its court near the two columns, between which, if you can pass, you are assured of heaven. But the mosque of Ibn Tulun, seen upon a sad day, makes a powerful impression, and from the summit of its minaret you are summoned by the many minarets of Cairo to make the pilgrimage to the mosques, to pass from the broken arches of these Saracenic cloisters to the blue mosque, the Red Mosque, the mosques of Muhammad Ali, of Sultan Hassan, of Kate Bey, of El Azhar, and so on to the Coptic church that is the silent center of old Cairo. It is said that there are over 400 mosques in Cairo. As I looked down from the minaret of Ibn Tulun, they called me through the mist that blotted completely out all the surrounding country, as if it would concentrate my attention upon the places of prayer during these holy days when the pilgrims were crowding in to depart with the holy carpet. And I went down by the staircase of the house, and in the mist I made my pilgrimage. As everyone who visits Rome goes to St. Peter's, so everyone who visits Cairo goes to the Mosque of Muhammad Ali in the Citadel, a gorgeous building in a magnificent situation, the interior of which always makes me think of court functions and of the pomp of life, rather than of prayer and self-denial. More attractive to me is the Blue Mosque, to which I returned again and again, enticed almost as by the fascination of the living blue of a summer day. End of section 21.